My son, who went missing a month ago, called me at night from an unknown number and whispered, "Dad, wake Mom up immediately and run away from home. She's going to set us all on fire." I thought it was a terrible dream, until I got in the car, looked in the rearview mirror, and saw something that changed everything. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and let us know where you were listening in the comments. The coffee mug stopped halfway to my lips. Lillian's voice drifted through the hallway from the guest room, door cracked just enough to let sound escape. Not the trembling widow's voice she used around Martha. This was different, casual, almost pleasant, like she was discussing dinner plans instead of death. 7 years is standard, but there are ways to expedite, she said into her phone. A pause. If circumstances are right, no, they trust me completely. The old man's a retired judge. He thinks everyone follows rules. I set the mug down without a sound. 30 days since Henry vanished after mentioning a contractor meeting. 30 days of police reports and empty leads. 27 days of Lillian sleeping in our guest room, claiming she needed family close. The old man. My hands had held gavels for 35 years, passed judgment on murderers and thieves who thought themselves clever. Now, those same hands gripped the kitchen counter while my son's wife discussed accelerating his death declaration. I stepped back from the hallway before she could notice my shadow. Martha was already asleep upstairs, exhausted from another day of crying into photo albums. Lillian had held her earlier, making appropriate sympathy sounds, asking gentle questions about insurance policies and property deeds. That was 3 hours ago. Now she stood in my guest room, discussing waiting periods. The house settled around me, old wood contracting an evening cool. I moved to my study and closed the door with a soft click. Henry's childhood photo sat on my desk. Gap-toothed smile, baseball cap crooked. He'd called me that morning 31 days ago, voice bright, saying he finally found someone to fix the foundation cracks. No contractor, no body, no credit card activity. Just Lillian moving into our home 72 hours later with 2 suitcases and theatrical grief. I pulled out a leather notebook from my desk drawer, started writing. Day 30, 9:47 p.m. Lillian on phone in guest room. Discussion of death declaration procedures. Tone, businesslike, no emotion. The pen felt strange in my hand after years of typing rulings. But some things required permanence. Over the next week, I documented everything. She left the house at odd times, Tuesday at 2 p.m., Thursday at 11 a.m., Sunday at dawn. Each time, she returned with nothing visible, but wore satisfaction like perfume. On Wednesday, I pretended to leave for my morning walk. Got to the corner, then circled back through the neighbor's yard. Found Lillian in my study, my locked study, with her phone out, photographing papers spread across my desk. She moved fast when she heard the side gate latch. By the time I reached the study door, she was in the kitchen making coffee like she'd been there all morning. "Sleep well?" she asked, all sunshine and concern. "Fine," I said. "You?" "Oh, you know, bad dreams about Henry." The papers on my desk were back in their folder, almost exactly as I'd left them. The property deed was on the bottom now, instead of the top. Friday afternoon, I followed her. 3 cars back through Scottsdale traffic, something I'd seen in enough surveillance footage to know the technique. She pulled into a coffee shop downtown, met a man I'd never seen, rough hands, contractor's build. Way he leaned close when they talked, suggested intimacy beyond professional. They reviewed papers together. She pointed to something, he nodded, they laughed. I took photos through my car window. Saturday morning, she asked Martha about the safe combination. For Henry's birth certificate, the detective said they need it for records. Martha almost gave it to her. "I'll handle it," I said, voice even. "Let me look through everything first." Lillian's smile tightened at the edges. "Of course, I'm sure you're more organized than I'd be." That evening, I contacted my bank, changed accounts to require dual signatures, told the manager it was routine security review. He didn't question a retired judge's request. Sunday, I followed Lillian again, this time to a storage facility on the east side. She met the same man from the coffee shop, both of them entering a unit near the back. They emerged 20 minutes later, empty-handed but purposeful. I wrote it all down, times, locations, license plates, evidence mounting like a case file. Monday night, Martha asked why Lillian was still staying with us. "She's grieving," Martha said. "But Seth, it's been a month. Maybe she should go home, start adjusting." "Give it a few more days," I said. though every instinct screamed different. I needed to see what Lillian would do next. Tuesday, she went through my coat pockets while I was supposedly napping. Found her in the closet when I came back early from the bathroom. She held up her phone with a bright smile. "Just checking the weather," she said. The business card she'd been photographing sat in my jacket pocket. Hazel Connors, general contractor. That night, I researched Arizona death declaration laws. 7 years standard wait. Exceptions for suspicious circumstances could accelerate to 2 years with proper evidence. Life insurance paid out. Property transferred to surviving spouse unless otherwise specified. Henry's will left everything to Lillian. They'd been married 6 years. I cross-referenced property records, insurance databases, contractor licenses. Hazel Connors had 2 previous business partners. Both died in accidents. Both had wives who remarried Connors within a year. The pattern crystallized like ice forming. Wednesday evening, Lillian asked me about liquidating assets. "Hypothetically," she said, sitting across from me at dinner while Martha cleared plates, "if someone needed to access inherited property quickly, what would be the process?" "Depends on probate," I said. "Could take months, years without a body." Her jaw tightened, just for a second. "Of course," she said softly. "I'm just trying to understand. For when we find Henry." When, not if. She never said if anymore. Thursday, I found her photographing documents in my safe. Martha had mentioned the combination over breakfast. Lillian asked about organizing Henry's papers for the investigation. I came home early, caught her bent over the open safe with her phone out. "I knocked," she said, straightening fast. "You didn't answer. Martha said you wouldn't mind." The property deed folder sat askew. She'd moved it, examined it, almost returned it correctly. "Find what you needed?" I asked. "Just checking on birth certificates. All in order." She smiled, squeezed past me in the doorway. "You're so organized. Henry always said that about you." Henry used to say I was paranoid. Checked locks twice, questioned convenient stories, trusted evidence over emotion. 35 years on the bench taught me patterns. The missing person isn't always the victim. Sometimes the grieving widow is the architect. That night, I sat in my study past midnight. House silent above me, Martha sleeping, Lillian in her temporary kingdom down the hall. I opened my laptop and searched insurance fraud, property inheritance, accelerated death declarations. Henry's photo stared at me from the desk. I picked it up, studied that gap-toothed smile, then set it down and reached for my notebook. My hands had held gavels once. Now they held evidence of betrayal. I began writing a list of what I knew, what I suspected, what I needed to prove. Somewhere out there, my son existed, and his wife was discussing how to declare him dead. The house creaked, old bones settling. I wasn't settling for anything. I was reviewing my notes when the phone vibrated across the desk. The clock showed 12:43 a.m. Unknown number glowing on the screen. I stared at it through 2 rings, hand hovering. 3rd ring broke the silence. "Hello?" Breathing, static. Then a voice I'd known for 33 years, strained beyond recognition, but unmistakable. "Dad, it's me. Listen carefully. Wake Mom right now and get out of the house. My wife and her—" The line cut to dead air. I hit redial immediately. Disconnected number, tried again. Nothing. No time to question. I moved. Upstairs in darkness, avoiding the 3rd step that creaked. Master bedroom door already open. Martha's breathing soft and steady under quilts. I crossed to her side, placed my palm over her mouth gently. Her eyes snapped open, wide with alarm. "Trust me," I whispered against her ear. "Get dressed. Don't turn on lights. We're leaving. Now." She saw something in my face. 42 years of marriage made words unnecessary sometimes. She nodded under my hand. I released her mouth and moved to the closet safe. My hands shook slightly as I worked the combination. First crack in the controlled facade I'd maintained all week. Inside, property deeds, wills, birth certificates, insurance documents, passports, bank records. I shoved everything into a leather folder. Martha dressed in darkness, pulling on jeans and a sweater without questions. The woman who'd spent 30 days weeping had transformed into someone I recognized from younger years. The nurse who'd stayed calm during emergencies, who'd raised a son while I worked late court sessions, who'd never broken under pressure. We moved downstairs like ghosts. I guided her past the guest room, where Lillian's door remained closed, no sound from within. Side door to the garage, I unlocked it slowly, each click of the bolt thunderous in my ears. The garage smelled of motor oil and cardboard boxes. Our sedan sat where I'd parked it that afternoon. I helped Martha into passenger seat, set the document folder in back. Then I stopped. The automatic garage door would make noise, wake the whole block. I moved to the manual release, pulled the cord, and began lifting. The door rose on old tracks, protesting quietly. Moonlight spilled across the concrete floor. That's when I saw her in the rearview mirror. Lillian emerged from the side yard, red gas canister in her hands, dressed head to toe in black. She moved with purpose toward the house foundation near my study wing, completely absorbed in her task. She didn't expect anyone awake. I watched her unscrew the canister cap, start pouring liquid along the base of the house. The smell hit me even from the garage, gasoline, sharp and unmistakable. She worked methodically, soaking the wooden siding, creating a trail. Martha gripped my arm. "Seth, quiet," I whispered. I put the car in neutral and released the parking brake. We rolled backward down the driveway without engine noise, just rubber on concrete and my hands steady on the wheel. Lillian remained focused on her work, pouring accelerant in practiced movements. We reached the street. I let the car coast another 30 yards before starting the engine. Then I drove around the corner and parked where we could see the house but remained hidden behind a hedgerow. Cut the lights. "What's happening?" Martha's voice shook. "Where's Lillian? Why are we—" "Henry called," I said, eyes fixed on our house. "She's trying to kill us. Watch." Through the gap in hedges, I saw Lillian step back from the house. She pulled something from her pocket, flash of metal in moonlight, maybe a lighter. She bent down near where the accelerant pooled heaviest. I grabbed Martha's phone from her purse and dialed 911. "Fire at 4782 Canyon Ridge Drive, Scottsdale," I said when the operator answered. "Someone's pouring accelerant around the foundation. Send trucks now." I disconnected before she could ask questions. 30 seconds later, orange light bloomed against our house. Flames crawled up the siding near my study, hungry and fast. They found the accelerant trail and raced along the foundation. Lillian's car, parked on the street, roared to life. She pulled away without headlights, speeding past our hiding spot. "Oh my Lord," Martha breathed. Sirens wailed in the distance, growing closer. The fire spread faster than I'd expected, consuming the study wing, reaching toward the main structure. Smoke billowed black against the night sky. Fire trucks arrived within minutes, 3 of them, crews spilling out, hoses deployed. Neighbors emerged onto lawns and bathrobes. Organized chaos. We sat in darkness and watched our home burn. "Seth," Martha's hand found mine. "You said Henry called. 2 minutes before I woke you, told me to get out. The line cut off. He's alive." Not a question, statement of fact, voice hardening. "He's alive," I confirmed. "And she has him." Martha turned to face me fully. The dashboard lights caught her expression. Fear transforming into something else, something fierce. "That's why she tried this," Martha said slowly. "She needs us gone to claim everything, the house, the accounts, whatever Henry has." 30 years of nursing had taught her to diagnose fast. She understood immediately. "We stay dead," I said, "until I find him." "We stay dead," she echoed. The flames reflected in our windows, orange and writhing. Firefighters shouted coordinates. Water arced through smoke. Our bedroom window shattered from heat, glass cascading onto the driveway where we'd backed out minutes before. We should have been asleep in that bedroom, should have died from smoke inhalation before the flames reached us, neat and clean and ruled accidental. Widow collects insurance, grieves appropriately, eventually remarries. Maybe that contractor with rough hands and 2 dead business partners. Instead, we sat in our 12-year-old sedan with a leather folder full of documents and nothing else. I started the engine. "Where are we going?" Martha asked. "Somewhere she won't look," I said, pulling away from the curb. "Somewhere I can think." In the rearview mirror, flames consumed the house where I'd raised my son, presided over family dinners, lived 40 years of ordinary life. The roof collapsed inward with a shower of sparks. Henry's voice echoed in my memory. "Wake Mom right now and get out of the house." He'd saved us. Now, I had to save him. Martha stared straight ahead as we drove, jaw set, hands folded in her lap with unnatural stillness. She tried to burn us alive, Martha said quietly. In our own home. Yes. While we slept. Yes. My son's wife. I said nothing. Let her process. What do we do? She asked finally. I turned onto the highway, leaving Scottsdale behind. The document folder sat in back, everything Lillian had wanted to access. Everything she'd needed destroyed along with us. We become invisible, I said. She thinks we're dead. That gives us advantage. And while she celebrates her success, I find Henry. And then, the question hung between us. I'd spent 35 years dispensing justice from a bench, following rules and procedures, believing in systematic fairness. But the system hadn't found my son. The system had let his wife move into my home, ask about life insurance, plan our murder. And then she pays, I said. Martha nodded once, sharp and definitive. Behind us, sirens faded into distance. Ahead, the highway stretched dark and empty. I pressed the accelerator, and we drove into the night. Two people who were supposed to be dead, carrying nothing but papers and purpose. The revenge began not with confrontation, but with strategic invisibility. Dawn light filtered through curtains so thin they barely qualified as barriers. I stood at the motel window watching the parking lot, phone in my hand, while Martha sat on the bed edge still wearing smoke-stained clothes from 12 hours ago. The document folder lay beside her, edges curling. Neither of us had slept. She thinks we're dead, I said, without turning from the window. That means she's confident, careless. She'll make mistakes. We use that. Martha's reflection in the glass showed exhaustion carved into her features. What about Henry? If she knows we survived? That's exactly why we stay invisible until I find him. The parking lot remained empty, except for a delivery truck rumbling past on the access road. This motel, registered under James Wilson, paid in cash from my wallet, sat on Scottsdale's northeast edge where nobody asked questions. I need to make some moves today, I said, turning to face her. Banking first, then legal, then law enforcement. You're going out there? Her hands gripped the bedspread. What if someone recognizes you? They will, that's the point. I moved to the small table where I'd laid out my plan on motel stationery. I officially survived the fire. File police reports, freeze accounts, hire help. But we stay here. Low profile. Let her think she succeeded long enough to get sloppy. Martha studied my face, reading 35 years of judicial decisions there. You already know what you're doing. Yes. She nodded once. Trust, hard-won, and absolute. I left her with the television remote and strict instructions. Don't answer the door. Don't call anyone. Wait for me. First Desert Bank opened at 9. I arrived at 9:03, walked past customers in the lobby, straight to the manager's office. Rebecca Torres looked up from her computer and actually stood, shock registering across her professional composure. Mr. Dunn, we heard about the fire. I need to freeze every account where Lillian Dunn has signatory authority. I placed my driver's license on her desk. Immediately. Rebecca sat down slowly. That's highly irregular. I'd need to consult. Every account where my daughter-in-law has signatory authority needs to be frozen immediately. I witnessed her commit arson against my property last night. She's dangerous. Her fingers hovered over her keyboard. Mr. Dunn, this is highly irregular. I spent 35 years as a judge. I know irregular. Do it now. Professional training warred with personal alarm on her face. Professional training lost. Within 60 minutes, every joint account, every authorization Lillian had touched, locked down. She'd wake up to find her access terminated, assuming she'd even try before declaring us dead. From the bank, I drove downtown. Strong and Associates occupied the 3rd floor of a building where I'd attended bar association dinners. David Strong met me in his office, closed the door personally, didn't call his secretary. Seth, he gripped my hand. The news said, can't believe everything you hear. I sat without invitation. I need legal counsel, criminal and civil. He pulled a legal pad from his drawer, uncapped a pen. Old school, like me. Talk. I talked for 20 minutes. David filled 4 pages, asked 6 clarifying questions, then set down his pen. You're describing attempted murder, arson, possibly kidnapping, he said carefully. This isn't civil court territory anymore. I know exactly what territory this is. I need you to help me build a case that leaves no room for reasonable doubt. His eyes held mine. We'd worked enough cases from opposite sides to understand each other's language. Let's go see the police, he said. Scottsdale Police Department occupied a building I'd visited hundreds of times for pre-trial conferences. Detective Maria Sanchez took my statement in an interview room, recording device on the table between us. She listened to my description of Lillian with the gas canister, asked precise questions about timing and angles and lighting. When I finished, she leaned back. Fire Marshal already flagged accelerant use, she said. 3 different ignition points around the foundation. Your statement about seeing her with a gas canister makes her our primary suspect. Don't notify her yet. I kept my voice level. My son is missing, and I have reason to believe she knows where he is. Sanchez's expression shifted. Missing how long? 31 days. She wrote that down. We'll need a separate report for the missing person. Already filed. The connection matters. If she learns I survive before I locate my son, understood. She clicked off the recording. We'll coordinate carefully. But, Mr. Dunn, if you're withholding information about your son's whereabouts, I don't know where he is. Yet. That's my next step. David and I left through the side entrance. He knew a private investigator, he said. Former FBI, licensed, bonded, expensive. Cost doesn't matter, I told him. We met Thomas Reed at a coffee shop on the south side, away from downtown. He looked like what he was, a man who'd spent 20 years noticing things for the government, now noticing them for money. I showed him Henry's photo, explained the timeline, mentioned Lillian's suspicious behavior and the arson attempt. Reed took notes on a tablet, asked about phone records, financial access, known associates. When I mentioned the contractor business card, his stylist paused. Hazel Connors? You know him? Of him, small-time fraud, couple assault charges, did 2 years in Yuma. Reed tapped his screen. Interesting company for a judge's daughter-in-law. I need you to find my son. I need evidence of everywhere Lillian goes, everyone she meets, every transaction she makes. Whatever it costs. Reed named a figure, 5,000 retainer, 2 weeks full surveillance. I transferred the money on my phone before his coffee arrived. One more thing, Reed said. You're officially alive now. Filed police reports, showed your face at the bank. Word gets around. Your daughter-in-law will know by tomorrow morning. Good, I said. Let her scramble. I returned to the motel as afternoon shadows stretched across the parking lot. Brought food from a drive-thru, explained each step to Martha while we ate cold burgers on thin bedspreads. So she'll know, Martha said, that we survived. She'll know I survived. I filed reports in my name only. Far as official records show, you're still missing. Why? Because I want her to wonder. Did you die? Are you hiding? She'll make mistakes trying to figure out what I know. Martha processed that, nodded. The fear I'd seen this morning had transformed into something quieter, harder. My phone rang, David's name on the screen. What did the fire marshal find? I asked. Accelerant at 3 distinct points, professional arson pattern. His voice carried weight. But there's something else. They traced the purchase. Security footage from a hardware store shows someone buying 3 gas canisters 2 days before your fire. I put the phone on speaker so Martha could hear. Who? That's the interesting part. Not Lillian. A man, late 30s, muscular build. Clerk remembered him because he paid cash for 3 large containers. I met Martha's eyes across the narrow space. Send me the footage. Already did. I opened my email. Grainy security image loaded. A man in a work jacket, broad shoulders, buying accelerant while looking directly at the camera. No attempt to hide his face. I didn't recognize him, but I would. The hardware store footage is on its way to Thomas Reed, I said, still holding the phone. He'll identify this guy within 24 hours. David's voice crackled through the speaker. Fire marshals calling it deliberate arson, multiple ignition points, professional execution. They're building a criminal case. Keep me updated. I ended the call and forwarded the image to Reed with a 1-line message. Who is this? Martha stared at the photo on my screen. Someone helped her. Someone bought the accelerant, planned the ignition points, knew what they were doing. I set the phone down. This wasn't amateur rage. This was calculated. 3 hours later, Reed called back. Hazel Connors, 34, general contractor, minor criminal history. His voice held the flat certainty of a man reading facts. Previous conviction for insurance fraud and assault. Served 2 years, released 18 months ago. The name connected. That business card in my coat pocket, the one Lillian had photographed. "Send me everything," I said. Reed's email arrived within minutes. Hazel Connors had a face to match the security footage. Angular features, cold eyes, the look of someone who'd learned young that rules were suggestions. His record showed a pattern: insurance claims on burned properties, suspicious accidents, witnesses who recanted testimony. The kind of man you hire when you need something illegal done efficiently. 1 week later, Reed requested a meeting. We sat at the same coffee shop, Reed's laptop open between us. He'd been tracking Lillian since the fire. A week of surveillance photos, times, locations, license plates. "She's met with Connors 4 times, Reed said, clicking through images. Lillian and Hazel at a restaurant, heads close. In a parking lot, her hand on his arm. Outside a storage facility, standing too close for professional distance. They're sleeping together," Martha said quietly from beside me. Reed nodded. "Body language suggests intimate relationship. And look at this." He pulled up more photos. Lillian shopping, getting her nails done, laughing with friends. Not a trace of grief in any frame. "She's celebrating," I said. "Whatever she thinks she accomplished, she's confident it worked." Reed closed that folder, opened another. But here's where it gets interesting. The storage facility images show dates and times. Hazel had rented the unit 3 months ago, before Henry disappeared. Security footage captured both him and Lillian accessing it regularly. "What's inside?" Martha asked. "Don't know yet. Need a search warrant, and David's working on it." Reed pulled up a map. "But I followed Connors from one of their meetings. He drove 60 miles east. The map showed desert, scattered properties, isolation. House on 5 acres, rental property in Connors' name, started 2 months ago." Reed zoomed in on satellite imagery. "No close neighbors, dirt road access, vehicle parked outside when I did flyovers." My pulse accelerated. "Flyovers? Drone surveillance, legal from public airspace." He clicked to thermal imaging footage. Someone's inside, body heat signature consistent during daytime hours when Connors is elsewhere. Martha's hand found mine under the table. "I followed him 60 miles east," Reed continued. "House in the middle of nowhere, 5-acre lot, no neighbors. Thermal imaging shows someone inside. I think we found your son." "How certain?" I asked. 90%. "But we need police for extraction. My license doesn't cover that." I studied the thermal images, the property layout, the isolation. Perfect place to hold someone. Perfect place to make someone disappear. Reed wasn't finished. "I also hired a tech specialist, legal access to public records, social media recovery." He opened another file. Found deleted posts showing Lillian and Connors together dating back 8 months. 8 months. While she smiled at our dinner table, asked Martha for recipes, kissed Henry goodnight. "Phone records came through this morning. David expedited the subpoena." Reed pulled up a spreadsheet. 237 calls between Lillian and Connors in the past 3 months. 200 calls, Martha whispered. "Text message recovery is partial, but what we found..." Reed scrolled to highlighted sections. Quote, "The old man's estate is worth it, trust me. Once they're out of the picture and H is declared legally dead, everything transfers." The words hung between us. She'd written that 3 days before Henry disappeared. "There's more," Reed said. "Financial analysis shows your estate, house, life insurance, investments, totals approximately $1.3 million. As Henry's widow, Lillian inherits everything if he's declared dead. I'd spent 35 years hearing criminal conspiracies. This one had my son's life at its center. "Show me everything," I said. Reed spent the next hour walking us through 8 months of planning. Social media posts deleted but recovered. Phone calls at odd hours. Financial searches about inheritance law. Meetings with Connors that preceded Henry's disappearance by 6 weeks. The original plan was simple. Wait 7 years for Henry's death declaration. Standard Arizona law for missing persons. Lillian would inherit as widow, split proceeds with Connors, disappear together, but something changed their timeline. "My guess," Reed said, "they got impatient or worried you'd discover something, so they accelerated. Eliminate you and your wife, forge documents to expedite Henry's death declaration, claim everything faster. And Henry, Martha's voice barely functioned, kept alive until the legal process completes. Can't declare someone dead if they show up. But once the paperwork clears, he didn't finish, didn't need to. That evening, we met at David's office after hours. Reed presented his complete dossier: surveillance photos, phone records, financial transactions, property records, thermal imaging. David reviewed everything with an attorney's precision, making notes, flagging exhibits, organizing evidence. "This is prosecutable," he said finally. "Conspiracy to commit murder, arson, kidnapping, insurance fraud. Federal charges if we can prove interstate communications. She'll spend her life in prison. First we need Henry safe," I said. "Agreed." David tapped his legal pad. "But timing matters. We go now, we get Henry back, but maybe lose the case on technicalities. We wait another week, we have enough evidence to guarantee she never sees daylight again." "How confident are you he's safe for one more week?" I asked Reed. "Connors brings supplies every 3 days like clockwork. Last delivery was yesterday. Food, water, basics. He's being kept alive." Martha looked at me. 42 years of marriage meant I could read everything in that look. Terror, hope, trust, fury. She was letting me decide. 8 months, I said quietly. They planned this for 8 months while she smiled at our dinner table, kissed Henry goodnight, asked Martha for recipes. David waited. Reed waited. Martha waited. I looked at the surveillance photos spread across David's desk. Lillian shopping, laughing, spending money she thought was hers. Connors accessing that desert house, confident and routine. "The phone records will bury her," David said. 200 calls, Seth. They documented everything. I thought about Henry in that isolated house, about Martha's hand gripping mine, about 35 years dispensing justice according to rules that had failed to protect my family. "We give it 1 more week," I said. "Reed, maintain 24-hour watch. If anything changes, if Connors does anything unusual, if there's any sign Henry's in immediate danger, we move immediately. Otherwise, we build this case so tight that Lillian and her accomplice spend the rest of their lives behind bars." I looked at Martha. 1 week, then we bring our son home." Reed nodded, closed his laptop, stood. "I'll coordinate surveillance teams. You'll have eyes on that property every hour." After he left, David organized the evidence into folders. Exhibit A through M, each one another nail. "She'll know you survived by now," David said. "Bank probably told her about the account freezes. She'll be scrambling." "Good," I said. "Let her scramble. Let her wonder what I know, what I've found, when I'm coming. Fear makes people careless." Martha stood at David's window, looking out at Scottsdale lights. "Our son's been in that house for 32 days, wondering if anyone's looking for him, wondering if anyone knows." "He knows," I said. "He warned us. That took courage and resourcefulness. He knows we're fighting for him." She turned from the window. Tears tracked down her face, but her expression held nothing soft. 1 week, she said. Then we end this. 1 week later, I sat in Detective Sanchez's office with a dossier thick enough to prosecute a cartel operation. David occupied the chair beside me, briefcase open, legal pad covered in notes. Sanchez turned the final page of Reed's surveillance compilation, looked up. "This is kidnapping, attempted murder, arson, conspiracy," she said. "We need to move on that house now." I nodded. "I have judicial contacts who can expedite the warrant." 20 minutes later, I stood in Judge Patricia Morrison's chambers with David. Patricia had presided over family court when I handled criminal cases. 30 years of shared courthouse hallways and bar association dinners. "Seth, you're retired," she said, reviewing the evidence packet on her desk. "What are you doing running an investigation?" "Patricia, I need a search warrant expedited. My son's been held captive for 4 weeks. I have thermal imaging, surveillance, phone records. The suspect is there now." She studied the thermal images, the surveillance photos, Reed's documentation. Her judicial mind worked through probable cause calculations I'd made thousands of times myself. "I have 35 years of credibility with you," I said quietly. "Read the evidence. This is legitimate." 4 hours later, the warrant was signed. Detective Sanchez coordinated with the SWAT team that evening in a conference room downtown. Reed's drone reconnaissance provided building layouts, identified entry points, mapped approach routes. The desert house sat isolated enough to require tactical planning, hostage situation and protocol, communication procedures, medical standby. "I want to be there," I said. Sanchez hesitated. "Mr. Dunn, at a distance, I understand, but that's my son." She nodded reluctantly. "Staging area only. You stay with me." Martha remained at the motel, with a police officer assigned for protection. If Lillian learned about the raid, she might react unpredictably. Better to keep Martha secure. That night, I lay awake on the motel bed, watching the ceiling. 28 days since Henry disappeared. 28 days of planning, gathering evidence, waiting for this moment. Martha's hand found mine in the darkness. "Tomorrow," she whispered. "Tomorrow." At 4 a.m., we drove separately to the staging area, an abandoned gas station 3 miles from the target property. SWAT vehicles assembled in the pre-dawn darkness. Officers checking equipment with practiced efficiency. Reed stood near his truck, laptop open, monitoring final approach coordinates. I watched from beside Detective Sanchez's vehicle as the convoy moved out. 4 tactical vehicles, 1 ambulance, spreading across desert scrubland as the sky lightened. Radio chatter crackled updates. "Approaching target, 200 yards, 100, in position." The loudspeaker announcement carried across the desert. "Police! Search warrant! Exit with hands visible." Brief standoff. Movement at the door. Then Hazel Connors emerged, saw the overwhelming tactical presence, raised his hands. Officers moved forward, secured him, entered the building systematically. Radio. "Ground floor clear. Basement door located. Proceeding down." My hands gripped the vehicle door. "Basement clear. We've got a victim. Male, 30s, restrained, requesting medical." The ambulance rolled forward. EMTs rushed inside with equipment. 10 minutes stretched into eternity while Sanchez held my arm, preventing me from moving toward the house. Then they emerged, Henry on a stretcher, gaunt and bearded, IV already attached, but conscious, eyes open, searching. His gaze found mine across 50 yards of desert. Recognition, relief, confusion. I moved forward. Sanchez didn't stop me this time. EMTs set the stretcher down, gave us space. "Dad?" Henry's voice came hoarse and broken. "You're alive? I thought—" "The fire. She said you and Mom—" I gripped his hand, felt how thin his fingers had become. "We got out. You saved us with that call." "I couldn't let her." His eyes welled. "I tried to warn you. Couldn't let them kill you." "She failed. You're safe. We're taking you home." In the ambulance, Henry explained between sips of water. Lillian drugged his coffee one evening. "Just regular decaf," she'd said. Woke up chained in that basement, Hazel standing over him. 4 weeks of threats, demands to sign property transfer documents, psychological pressure designed to break him. "I refused," he said. "Every time, they threatened, they isolated me, but I wouldn't sign." "The phone call?" Detective Sanchez asked from across the ambulance. Hazel left his phone on the table during a supply run, turned around for 30 seconds. I grabbed it, called the only number I could remember, Dad's cell. Got maybe 15 words out before he came back. Henry's jaw tightened. He beat me for that, but it was worth it. At the scene, officers recovered everything. Chains bolted to the basement wall, forged documents scattered on a makeshift table, Henry's belongings in a corner, wallet, keys, the watch Martha gave him. Each item photographed, cataloged, preserved. Hazel refused to speak. Sat in the police vehicle with his attorney, expressionless. "Kidnapping, felony imprisonment, assault," Sanchez told me. "He's looking at decades." "What about Lillian?" I asked. "Working on it. Her phone records tie her to him, but we need more for an arrest warrant. Right now, she can claim she didn't know what he was doing." At Scottsdale Memorial Hospital, doctors admitted Henry for observation. Dehydration, malnutrition, minor injuries from restraints. 24 hours of IV fluids, psychological evaluation, rest. Martha arrived with her police escort, moved straight to Henry's bedside. Their reunion lasted 10 minutes of tears and whispered words I didn't intrude upon. This was theirs. Later, after Henry slept under sedation, Martha and I sat in plastic chairs, watching his chest rise and fall. "Hazel's in custody," she said. "Henry's safe." "Yes, but Lillian planned this entire thing, and she's out there thinking she won." I looked at my phone. Text from Sanchez. "Hazel's phone extracted. 200 plus messages with Lillian, sending files to your attorney, meeting tomorrow morning. I typed one-handed, 9 a.m., your office. Martha dozed. Henry's medical monitors beeped steadily. I allowed myself one moment of closed eyes, knowing my son breathed safely nearby. Tomorrow, we'd build the case that would bring Lillian down. I left the hospital at dawn. Martha would stay with Henry while I handled what came next. Detective Sanchez's office at 9, David already there, laptop open, reviewing extracted data. Sanchez slid a thick folder across her desk. 237 messages between Hazel and your daughter-in-law over 3 months. She opened the folder. Some of it's coded, some of it's explicit, but we still have a problem. I waited. She never directly says kidnap him or kill them. She's careful. Good attorneys will argue she had no knowledge of Hazel's actions. I scanned the messages David had highlighted. Timeline problems. Removing obstacles. Once everything's settled, we'll have what we deserve. Coded language. Deniable implications. 35 years on the bench taught me this pattern. Masterminds who insulate themselves from direct culpability. Then we attack where she wasn't careful, I said. The insurance policy, the forged documents, those have her name on them. David closed his laptop. I spent the week digging into financial records, found something interesting. He pulled out insurance documents. $500,000 policy on Henry's life, taken out 3 months before he disappeared. Lillian's the sole beneficiary. I never consented to that, I said. Exactly. The spousal consent form has your signature, forged. Handwriting analysis will prove it. 3 months of planning, minimum, probably longer. There's more, David continued. Lillian attempted to transfer your house title into her name alone, used a forged power of attorney claiming you authorized it. County records flagged it as suspicious, never processed. He showed me the document, my signature, perfectly replicated, notary stamp below it. That notary doesn't exist, David said. Check the Arizona database, fake stamp, fake name, direct evidence of fraud with Lillian's involvement. Sanchez leaned forward. She's smart. Timeline problems. Removing obstacles. That's code, but it's deniable. Defense attorney will say she meant financial problems, relationship obstacles. We need more. We have more, I said. Multiple fronts. Criminal case develops while we attack civilly. Lower burden of proof. Financial crimes leave paper trails she can't erase. David nodded. Civil lawsuit to annul the marriage based on fraud. Notify insurance company officially. Sue for attempted property theft. Drain her resources, freeze her assets. Over the next 3 hours, we built the strategy. Not one case, 6 simultaneous legal actions across multiple jurisdictions, each requiring separate attorneys, separate defenses, separate resources. Bleed her dry while building the criminal case. 2 days later, David and I sat across from a claims investigator at Western States Life Insurance headquarters. I presented the evidence dossier, surveillance photos, phone records, timeline documentation. The investigator flipped through pages, her expression shifting from professional skepticism to alarm. If your daughter-in-law attempted to file a claim knowing the insured was alive, that's federal wire fraud, she said. 10 to 15 years minimum. We take this very seriously. She hasn't filed yet because she thinks she needs a death certificate, I said. How long until you have enough to prosecute? With what you've given me, 2 weeks. David filed the marriage annulment petition that afternoon. Legal theory. Lillian married Henry, specifically to position herself for inheritance fraud. Evidence. Policy timeline. Immediate actions after disappearance. Conspiracy with Hazel. If successful, she'd lose all spousal rights. Filed in Maricopa County Superior Court. The property fraud complaint went to county court. Criminal charges for forged documents, fake notary, attempted theft. Asset freeze motion filed in federal court. Prevent her from moving money while investigations proceeded. Insurance fraud complaint to federal prosecutors. Forged consent form, suspicious timing, clear intent. All served simultaneously on a Tuesday morning. I imagine Lillian opening her door to 4 different process servers. 4 different attorneys suddenly necessary. 4 different court dates. 4 different defense strategies. The financial pressure alone would be devastating. Detective Sanchez brought Lillian in for questioning 3 days after Henry's rescue. She arrived with an attorney, composed and ready. "I don't know anything about where Henry was," she said, attorney beside her. "That man, Hazel, I met him a few times, but I had no idea he was dangerous. This is insane." "You called him 237 times in 3 months," Sanchez said. "We were friends. That doesn't mean I knew what he was doing." When informed about the frozen accounts and legal filings, though, her composure cracked, just slightly, a tightness around her eyes, fingers gripping the table edge. Over the following week, the pressure mounted. Each legal action required response. Each court date demanded appearance. Each attorney needed payment from dwindling resources. I monitored through David. She's scrambling, making mistakes, hired 3 different attorneys who are already contradicting each other's strategies. At the hospital, Henry recovered steadily. Color returned to his face, strength to his movements. Martha stayed beside him, but I split time between family and strategy sessions. "She's bleeding money on attorneys," I told David in his office one evening. "Accounts frozen, facing fraud charges with paper trails. Even if she beats the kidnapping conspiracy, she loses everything else." "That's the idea," David said. "Multiple fronts, constant pressure. Make her choose between defending criminal charges or defending civil suits. She can't win them all." The office table was covered with legal documents. Each one represented another pressure point, another tightening vice. Superior Court, annulment hearing scheduled. Federal Court, asset freeze hearing pending. County Court, property fraud arraignment set. Insurance investigation, subpoenas issued. Criminal investigation, ongoing with prosecutor review. David's phone rang. He answered, listened, hung up. That was the prosecutor's office. He set his pen down carefully. Hazel's attorney contacted them. He wants to talk about a deal, testimony against Lillian in exchange for reduced sentence. I leaned forward. "What does the prosecutor want?" I asked. "To hear what Hazel has to say. Meeting scheduled for tomorrow. They'll let us know if his testimony is useful." The criminal case, which had seemed circumstantial, might suddenly become ironclad. Hazel knew everything, participated in everything. If he testified, Lillian's careful coded language wouldn't matter. His words would fill in every gap. I stood, gathered my documents. "Call me as soon as you hear." Outside, evening had settled over Scottsdale. I drove back toward the hospital, toward Martha and Henry, toward the family Lillian had tried to destroy. But tomorrow, her legal position might collapse completely. Tomorrow, the man who'd helped her might give prosecutors exactly what they needed. Tomorrow, the walls would close entirely. I allowed myself a moment of satisfaction. Not triumph, not yet, but systematic progress. Each day, each action, each filing moved closer to justice. 35 years of judicial training had prepared me for this. Not for the courtroom where I'd presided, but for this strategic battlefield where evidence and procedure and timing mattered more than emotion. Lillian had been careful, but not careful enough. She'd planned for months, but I'd spent decades learning how the system worked. And now that system was coming for her from 6 different directions at once. 2 weeks later, I sat in David's office when the process server arrived. David read the documents, his expression darkening. "Lillian's fighting back. She's hired Marcus Brennan. He's aggressive, expensive, and he doesn't play fair." I took the papers. Counter lawsuit, claiming I'd unlawfully restricted her access to marital property, caused emotional distress, manipulated the situation to frame her, demanded $2 million in damages. "She's playing victim," David said. "This is her strategy. Make herself look like the one being persecuted." Cold rain streaked the windows behind him. December in Arizona brought weather as unpredictable as this case. "Let her spend money on this," I said. "Every dollar she spends defending the indefensible is a dollar she won't have for what's coming." Within days, Brennan began his media campaign. Subtle at first, background quotes to reporters about grieving widows persecuted by powerful retired judges. Then bolder. Local news picked up the angle, ran a segment about a woman claiming judicial connections had been weaponized against her. Lillian gave a carefully scripted interview. I watched from David's office, recognizing the performance. Tears at precise moments. Confusion performed convincingly. Claims of betrayal by Hazel, ignorance of kidnapping, belief that Seth and Martha died in tragic accident. Juries are sympathetic to women who look like victims, David warned. We need to counter this carefully. No, I said. Let her build false confidence. When the evidence comes out, the contrast will be devastating. We compiled our response to the countersuit methodically. Phone records showing 237 calls with Hazel, call durations establishing pattern. Financial records. $47,000 withdrawn before Henry disappeared, transferred to Hazel's account. Storage unit lease with both names, found in Hazel's belongings during arrest. Most damning, gas canister purchase receipts. Paid with Lillian's credit card, though Hazel made the physical purchase. The court ordered Lillian to give deposition for the civil annulment case. Mid-December I attended, sitting behind David, watching through glass partition. She appeared composed, well-dressed, playing wronged wife perfectly. Under oath, she maintained ignorance of Hazel's plans. We were friends, nothing more. Those phone calls were just support during a difficult time. When confronted with storage unit lease, I never signed that. He must have forged my signature. But pressure revealed cracks, wrong dates, contradictory statements about when she met Hazel, small mistakes I documented on my legal pad, texting David follow-up questions in real time. Late December, police executed search warrant on the storage unit, found 3 additional gas canisters matching the type used in arson, duct tape, chains matching those that held Henry, and a laptop computer. Computer forensics pulled everything. Saved documents, draft property transfers, life insurance claim forms, document metadata showing creation dates, including dates Lillian claimed she had no contact with Hazel. Most damning, a saved document titled Timeline. It outlined everything. Kidnapping through inheritance claim. Created 3 months before Henry disappeared. Detective Sanchez called me. Computer forensics pulled the creation dates on these documents. Timeline document created 3 months before Henry disappeared. Life insurance claim form drafted 2 weeks after Henry went missing, while she was living in your house playing concerned wife. Send copies to the prosecutor immediately, I said. This is premeditation. Early January, Hazel's attorney contacted the prosecutor about a cooperation deal. Hazel faced 20-plus years for kidnapping, arson conspiracy, attempted murder. Prosecutor offered 15 in exchange for full testimony against Lillian. David and I were briefed. Hazel would testify Lillian masterminded the entire scheme. His statement? Lillian approached him 8 months ago, offered $100,000 to help with family problem. She provided specific instructions about where to take Henry, how long to hold him, when to execute the arson. He's giving us everything, the prosecutor said. Says Lillian approached him 8 months ago, offered $100,000 to solve her family problem. Told him exactly how to execute the kidnapping, exactly where you'd be the night of the arson. Is his testimony credible enough to convict? I asked. Combined with the physical evidence? Absolutely. Brennan learned of Hazel's cooperation, tried to negotiate with prosecutors. They refused any deal. I'd made it clear through David I wanted full prosecution, every charge. Brennan realized the defense was collapsing. Late January, Lillian's counter-lawsuit was quietly withdrawn. Tactical retreat. The victim strategy abandoned. She's retreating, I told David when the notice arrived. Brennan knows the testimony's coming and the evidence is solid. Dropping the countersuit means she's preparing for criminal defense, which means she knows what's coming. Good, let her know. Let her spend these last days of freedom understanding exactly what she did. By late January, the prosecutor was finalizing criminal charges for grand jury presentation. We met regularly, me providing documentation, timeline, context from my judicial experience. Henry gave his formal statement from home, discharged now from hospital, attending therapy. Martha provided her statement about the fire escape, witnessing Lillian with the gas canister. The prosecutor called in late afternoon, last week of January. Grand jury session scheduled. We're ready to indict. When? I asked. Grand jury convenes in 3 days. If they indict, and they will, we'll arrest her immediately. Arraignment within 48 hours. I thanked him, stood. David closed his laptop. We walked out together into winter afternoon light. My phone buzzed. Martha. How did it go? I typed back, it's happening, 3 days. I drove toward the rebuilt home where Martha and Henry waited. 3 days until Lillian faced formal charges. 3 days until arrest. The machinery of justice, once set in motion by my methodical evidence compilation, now moved forward under its own weight. I parked in the driveway, sat for a moment, looking at the house she'd tried to burn, the family she'd tried to destroy. 3 more days. 3 days later, I sat in my rebuilt living room at dawn. February cold pressed against windows. My phone rang. David. Grand jury voted to indict. Arrest warrant issued. Detective Sanchez is executing it this morning. I checked my watch. 8:47 a.m. Somewhere in Scottsdale, police were moving to take Lillian into custody. I didn't feel triumphant, just quiet certainty of machinery operating as designed. Martha came downstairs, saw my face, understood without asking. "It's today?" I nodded. "It's today." At 9, police arrived at Lillian's apartment with the signed warrant. Charges: attempted murder, 2 counts for Martha and me, conspiracy to commit kidnapping, arson, insurance fraud, forgery. She was taken into custody, transported to Maricopa County Jail. Bail hearing scheduled for the following day. I didn't attend the arrest, learned details through official channels, same as any other case. The next day, Martha and I attended arraignment at Maricopa County Superior Court. Lillian appeared in orange jumpsuit, handcuffed. The composed manipulator gone, just another defendant. The judge read charges methodically: attempted murder, kidnapping conspiracy, arson, fraud, forgery. Prosecutor presented evidence summary: Hazel's testimony, storage unit evidence, computer files, phone records. Brennan argued for reasonable bail. "Your Honor, my client is not a flight risk. She has community ties, no prior criminal record. Your Honor, the defendant conspired to kidnap her husband, hold him captive for 4 weeks, then attempted to murder his elderly parents by arson," the prosecutor countered. "The evidence includes witness testimony, physical evidence, computer files documenting premeditation, and a co-conspirator's detailed statement. The state requests bail of $750,000. The judge reviewed paperwork, severity of charges, defendant's situation. The charges are severe: attempted murder of 2 individuals, conspiracy involving kidnapping and imprisonment, arson with intent to kill. Bail is set at $750,000, cash or bond." Brennan stood quickly. "Your Honor, my client's accounts are frozen. That's a separate civil matter. Bail stands." Lillian couldn't meet it. All assets frozen from civil proceedings. No family willing to help. Insurance companies wouldn't bond someone accused of insurance fraud. She returned to jail. Weeks passed. February crawled into March. Lillian remained incarcerated, awaiting trial. Brennan filed motions to reduce bail. All denied. David told me Lillian was struggling with jail conditions. Isolation, reality. Other inmates knew her charges: attempted murder, kidnapping. She was isolated for safety. Early March, the prosecutor contacted David. Brennan was proposing a plea agreement. Lillian would plead guilty to reduced charges: conspiracy to commit kidnapping, fraud. Sentencing recommendation: 12 to 15 years with possibility of parole. In exchange, drop attempted murder charges, arson charge. The prosecutor asked my opinion through David. My response was immediate. She drugged my son, held him captive, tried to burn my wife and me alive in our own home, for money. She planned it for months. No deals. I want a jury to hear every detail, see every piece of evidence, understand exactly what she did. Martha agreed beside me. She tried to kill us, and our son. No shortcuts. I'd spent 35 years as a judge. Justice required transparency, not convenience. The public needed to see full evidence, understand complete conspiracy. Henry deserved public vindication, not backroom negotiation. The prosecutor conveyed my decision to Brennan. No plea deal. Mid-March brought the civil court, ruling on marriage annulment. The judge reviewed evidence: insurance fraud, forged documents, Hazel's testimony preview. Ruling: marriage entered under fraudulent pretenses with intent to exploit for financial gain. Marriage between Henry and Lillian declared void from inception. Judge granted the annulment, David told me. Marriage void from inception due to fraudulent intent. Henry was never legally married to her. She has zero claim to anything. Good. One less avenue for her to exploit. What about the criminal trial? Prosecutor says April. They're ready. Federal prosecutors filed separate insurance fraud charges late March. False life insurance application, forged consent form, intent to collect fraudulent claim. These charges carried additional 10 to 15-year sentence, separate from state case. Lillian now faced state charges and federal charges simultaneously. Through these months, Henry continued therapy, slowly rebuilding, returned to work part-time, software engineering, could work from home, attended support group for kidnapping survivors. The family was closer now than before, strengthened by what we'd survived, but Henry still had to prepare for trial testimony, had to face her. I have to testify, face her in court, he asked one evening. Yes, but you won't be alone. Your mother and I will testify too. The prosecutor will be there. You'll tell the truth about what she did, and the jury will hear it. And she'll be convicted? The evidence is overwhelming. Yes, she will be. First week of April, I met with Assistant District Attorney Rachel Torres, lead prosecutor. She explained trial strategy. Begin with Henry's kidnapping, establish conspiracy. Present arson attempt, show premeditation and intent to murder. Then financial motive, insurance fraud, property scheme. End with Hazel's testimony tying everything to Lillian's direction. This is one of the strongest cases I've prosecuted, Torres said. The evidence is overwhelming. I spent days in the prosecutor's office helping organize evidence, timeline boards, labeled documents, prepared exhibits, serving as expert consultant on the case I'd experienced as victim. Martha practiced her statement about the night of the fire. Henry gave multiple practice testimony sessions. David coordinated between civil outcomes and criminal trial, all evidence physically organized in the prosecution war room. First Friday of April, Torres called me. Trial starts Monday. We're ready. I set down my phone, looked at Martha. 5 days until trial. Are you ready? She nodded. I've been ready since the night we drove away from our burning house. I'm ready to tell a jury exactly what she did. I called up the stairs. Henry, come down for a minute. Henry appeared at the top of the stairs. Trial starts Monday. Prosecutor says we're ready. I want us to talk through this together, as a family, before we walk into that courtroom. The three of us sat in the living room Lillian had tried to destroy, in the home she'd tried to burn, preparing to face her as a united front. 5 days. Then justice. 5 days later, I stood outside Maricopa County Superior Court. Monday morning, April, Martha beside me, Henry a step behind. The building rose against cloudless Arizona sky. David met us at the entrance. Jury selection starts in 30 minutes. Are you ready? I nodded. I'd been ready since the night I saw flames in my rearview mirror. We passed through security, elevator rising to the 4th floor. Courtroom 4C, the place where months of evidence would finally be presented. Jury selection took 2 days, 12 jurors, 4 alternates. Prosecutor Rachel Torres opened methodically. Timeline from kidnapping through attempted murder. Defense attorney Brennan tried portraying Lillian as Hazel's manipulated victim. I sat in the front row behind prosecution, Martha beside me, observing. The first 3 weeks were forensic foundation. Fire marshal testified about accelerant patterns, multiple ignition points, deliberate arson. Document examiner presented signature analysis. Power of attorney forged. Side-by-side projection on courtroom screen. My real signature versus the forgery. Clear differences in pressure and stroke patterns. Computer forensics expert detailed the laptop from storage unit. Timeline document projected for jury. Creation date, 3 months before Henry disappeared. Week 4, they called me as witness, sworn in after 35 years of swearing in others. Strange symmetry. Torres led me through Henry's disappearance, Lillian living in our home, suspicious behaviors. I recounted the overheard phone conversation about death declaration waiting periods. Described the midnight call from Henry, evacuating Martha. What did you observe as you left? Torres asked. I looked in the rearview mirror and saw her clearly, my son's wife, carrying a red gas canister, pouring liquid around our home's foundation. There was no question who it was. The moon was bright. The streetlights were on. I saw her face. What did you do? I drove away, and I called for help. Brennan's cross-examination tried suggesting I misidentified in darkness. I calmly detailed moon phase, street lighting, clear view. The jury watched my composure, my judicial bearing. Week 5, Martha testified, her voice steady. 42 years of marriage. When he said we had to leave immediately, I knew he meant it. She confirmed seeing Lillian through the car mirror with the gas canister, described watching our home burn from a distance. She tried to kill us in our sleep, Martha said, controlled. Not out of passion, but for money. Cross-examination couldn't shake her certainty. Week 6 brought Henry's testimony, the courtroom packed with observers. He faced Lillian across the room for the first time since rescue. Described their marriage, Lillian's gradual questions about family finances. The night of disappearance. She made coffee, said I looked tired. I drank it. Everything went black. Waking chained in basement, Hazel's threats, refusal to sign documents despite weeks of pressure. His voice broke slightly. I kept refusing because I knew what those signatures meant. It meant my parents would die. He described managing to call me. I had maybe 30 seconds before he came back. I used it to warn them. Several jurors dabbed eyes. Attention remained focused. Brennan's cross-examination was brutal, suggesting Henry misunderstood Lillian's intentions. Henry firmly rejected every implication. Week 7, Thomas Reed presented surveillance documentation. Photos of Lillian and Hazel together. Restaurants, parking lots, storage facility. Details of following Hazel to the desert house. Thermal imaging showing captive. Their body language was intimate, coordinated, Reed testified. This wasn't casual friendship. Week 8 brought Hazel. He appeared in orange jumpsuit, shackled. Described meeting Lillian 8 months before Henry's disappearance. She said she had a family problem, asked if I could help for the right price. He detailed the conspiracy development. Lillian's specific instructions about kidnapping, Henry, location, supplies. She told me exactly when the old couple would be asleep. Said to use accelerant on the foundation near the study. Money trail. She paid me $100,000 in cash over 3 months, 50 up front, 50 when the job was done. The night of arson. She called me that evening, said, "Tonight, they're both home, do it." Brennan attacked his credibility, convicted criminal testifying for reduced sentence. But Hazel's specificity, matching other evidence, undermined the attack. Week 9, defense rested without calling Lillian. She had no good answers. Silence was her only option. Week 10, closing arguments. Torres synthesized 3 months of evidence. The defendant planned this conspiracy for months, recruited an accomplice, paid him cash, kidnapped her husband, attempted to murder his parents, all for money. Visual presentation. Timeline wall showing every event, every piece of evidence, all connecting to Lillian. Brennan attempted reasonable doubt, suggested Hazel acted independently. After 3 months of overwhelming evidence, it rang hollow. The jury deliberated 3 days. We waited in the courthouse, unable to leave. On the 3rd day early afternoon, verdict reached. Everyone reconvened. Lillian brought in, showing strain now, jail time visible in her appearance. "Has the jury reached a verdict?" the judge asked. "We have, Your Honor. Count 1, attempted murder, Seth Dunn, guilty. Count 2, attempted murder, Martha Dunn, guilty. Count 3, conspiracy to commit kidnapping, guilty. Count 4, arson, guilty. Count 5, insurance fraud, guilty. Count 6, forgery, guilty. Guilty on every count." Lillian's face crumbled. Brennan placed a hand on her shoulder. My face remained impassive, but Martha gripped my hand tightly. 2 weeks later, sentencing hearing. Torres requested maximum consecutive sentences totaling 30 years. Defense pleaded for leniency. Concurrent sentences. Victim impact statements. I approached the podium, placed my written statement on the lectern, looked at the judge. 3 minutes of precise, unemotional description of calculated cruelty and its impact. Never raised my voice, never wavered. The judge's ruling: 25 years imprisonment without possibility of early release, consecutive to any federal sentence. Additional, restitution to victims, $100,000. Lifetime restraining order from Dunn family. The bailiff led Lillian away in handcuffs. I watched her disappear through the courtroom door. 3 weeks after sentencing, I stood in the driveway of our fully rebuilt home. Early August. The structure that rose from ashes looked different. New foundation where Lillian poured accelerant. New study wing. New everything. But more than rebuilt. Restored. Martha planted flowers in the front bed, a detail Lillian never cared about. Henry's car was parked beside mine. He'd been staying with us during recovery, though he was looking for his own place again. Normal life, slowly returning. Official notification arrived. Lillian transported to Arizona State Prison Complex in Perryville. Inmate number 847392. 25-year sentence registered. Federal insurance fraud trial scheduled for the following year. Martha read the document, nodded once, filed it away. Didn't need to see it again. Hazel received 18 years per plea agreement, sent to a separate facility. David reported his sentencing. He apologized to the court, said he wished he'd never met her. Final construction completed early August. I walked through restored rooms, seeing Martha's design choices. New kitchen where she experimented with recipes Henry remembered from childhood. Study rebuilt exactly as before. My desk, my books, the view of desert. The guest room where Lillian once stayed had been converted to home gym for Henry's recovery. Symbolic erasure of her presence. Henry continued therapy 3 times per week. Started support group for trauma survivors. Returned to full-time remote work, programming for aerospace company. Looking at apartments now, discussing independence returning. The relationship between us was deeper than before. Trauma sometimes strengthens bonds. Through David, I petitioned Western States Life Insurance regarding fraud penalties collected. Requested that any monetary judgments against Lillian be directed to domestic violence charity. They agreed. Funds would support Family Crisis Center of Arizona. Let something good come from her schemes, I told Martha. She and I were closer after surviving attempted murder together. Shared experience of facing death, testifying in court, watching justice served. Henry was more communicative now, less guarded. Therapy teaching emotional openness. Weekly family dinners established as ritual. Sacred time together. We were a good family before. We were stronger now. Local news had covered the trial extensively. Several neighbors approached me with support, sharing their own betrayal stories. Former judicial colleagues reached out, praising my handling of the situation. I declined interview requests. The verdict speaks. We don't need to. Civil judgments against Lillian stood. $100,000 in restitution she'd never pay. Property deed permanently cleared. Life insurance policy canceled. All done family assets secured with updated protections. I thought about 35 years on the bench, cases I'd presided over, understanding now, viscerally, what victims feel waiting for verdicts. My judicial philosophy validated thorough evidence, patient process, inevitable justice. I spent decades facilitating justice for others, I told David one afternoon. This time, justice facilitated itself. August 28th. Date chosen deliberately. Exactly 1 year since Lillian's timeline began. Martha, Henry, and I hosted intimate lunch. David and his wife, Detective Sanchez, Thomas Reed and his partner. Small gathering of 8 people in our restored dining room. Casual lunch, afternoon light through windows. No formal speeches. After lunch, guests in living room talking. I stepped outside to back patio. Martha joined me. We stood looking at desert landscape beyond our property. Henry was visible through the window, laughing at something David said. Genuine joy. 5 months ago, we were fleeing for our lives, I said. Now we're home. She tried to destroy us, Martha said. Instead, she showed us how strong we are. I felt it then. Not triumph, not vindication, just peace. I'd spent my career understanding justice versus revenge. Revenge is personal, immediate, emotional, often unsatisfying. Justice is systematic, patient, complete, brings actual resolution. My legal knowledge and judicial connections weren't weapons. They were tools for proper process. The system worked because I trusted it, fed it evidence, let it function as designed. I wasn't a vigilante in judge's robes. I was a citizen who knew how to use the law. Henry announced he'd found an apartment, moving out next month. Healthy independence. Martha was planning a trip to visit her sister. I was considering volunteer work, teaching civics at community college, explaining the legal system, life continuing, trauma integrated but not defining. Evening of August 28th. Guests departed, just the three of us. Sitting in the living room I'd designed, in the house that survived fire and emerged stronger. "Dad, do you ever think about her?" Henry asked. "About what she's going through in prison?" I considered. "Sometimes, but not with satisfaction or regret, just acknowledgement. She made choices. The legal system responded. That's how it should work." "Do you think we'll ever fully move past this?" "We already are, every day." Henry closed his laptop showing apartment listings. "I think I'll make tea. Anyone want some?" "Please," Martha said. I watched my son walk to the kitchen. The kitchen Lillian tried to destroy, in the house she tried to burn, with the family she tried to annihilate. All still here. All still whole. Stronger even, the sound of water running, kettle on the stove, Martha's knitting needles clicking softly. Ordinary sounds, beautiful because they were ordinary. I closed my eyes for a moment, feeling the weight of 10 months lift. Justice wasn't revenge. It was this. Being able to sit in my living room on an August evening, my family safe around me, the law having done its work. I spent 35 years as a judge. Now I understood justice from the other side. The system works, not perfectly, not always quickly. But when fed patience, evidence, and respect for process, it works. Henry returned with tea. We sat together. No more words needed. Just family, just peace, just justice. If you like this story, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your impressions of this story in the comments. To listen to the next story, click on the box on the left. Thank you for watching.